but few men know what they need. This was said by Pythagoras and comes from a compilation of 2 books known as the Complete Pythagoras. It is important to note that all we truly know of him is by way of 4 biographies that have survived antiquity. Pythagoras was born around 560 BC on the Greek island of Samos, which is present-day Turkey. Early on, he sought the advice of Thales, the first of the 7 sages of Greece, who told him to visit Egypt. An interesting note here is that Thales is attributed with the phrase, "know thyself," which is a concept that has come up frequently in our discussions. Pythagoras traveled extensively for over 20 years in Egypt alone, and also became a student of the Babylonian and Chaldean mystery schools. He rejected no doctrine, for he felt he could profit an understanding from them all. When setting up his own group of philosophers in the city of Croton, historian Iamblichus, the most trusted biographer of Pythagoras, writes that he had already amounted 600 followers. But of these 600, only 218 men and 17 women made it through the strict aesthetic disciplines necessary to be taught his knowledge. Albert Pike writes in Morals and Dogma that Pythagoras refused the title of sage, which means one who knows. He invented and applied to himself that of philosopher, signifying one who is fond of or studies things secret or occult. The astronomy of which he taught was astrology. His science of numbers was based on Kabbalistic principles. Everything, he said, is veiled in numbers. The belief system of the Pythagoreans can be simplified in 3 words. God is numbers. It sounds simple enough, but this is actually an incredibly complex statement that involves the use of sacred geometry and metaphysical concepts of one consciousness, karma, and evolution. He believed that through mathematics we learn to not become sloppy thinkers, and therefore become open to recognize that there is law within the universe. Central to this ideology was the figure known as the tetractys, or the mystic triangle. The Pythagoreans worshipped this symbol because they felt it to be a perfect, rational representation of God. It is composed of the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, which add up to 10, the decade, considered by the Pythagoreans to be the perfect, divine, universal number. This is because the number 1, the even odd, as they called it, represents God animating as matter into 0, which is valueless, nothing, or no thing. This coincides with the Hermetic Kabbalistic concepts we have been studying, which state that God is limitless, while his manifestations are the limited. Just as we see in the 10 Sephiroth of the Tree of Life diagram, Aristotle points out that according to the Pythagoreans, the void first separates the numbers and determines their nature, as likewise it does the place of things. They believe that the beginning of all things was the monad. We might view it as a supernal triangle. And from that came the unlimited duad, or matter, of all being, your 2 pillars. From matter we arrive at numbers. Points were attributed to number 1, lines the number 2, surfaces 3, and solids 4. He taught that numbers signify points, and that it is the space between them that is unlimited. Can a number of points ever produce a line? The answer is yes, when combined at certain intervals. Therefore, lines put together can produce a surface. These surfaces then at certain intervals create body in the world around us. It is important to remember though that while the space between these objects is infinite, the objects themselves are not, and therefore capable of evolution. Whatever is limited must have an end. The middle space between them can be infinitely divided. Pythagoras taught that the soul, or self, is what occupies these intervals between objects. This is what is meant by meditating on the Sephirah and traveling paths using the tarot on the tree of life. We see the constant use of the first four numbers, and this is because they are the keys to harmonic ratios and Pythagoras' linking of music with the cosmos, which gives us the spheres of music. He divided the universe into 10 spheres symbolized by 10 concentric circles. Sounds like the tree of life. His system was heliocentric, and the center was called the divine fire, which might be symbolized by us in Tifereth, known as the Christ consciousness. Strangely, Pythagoras also had another planet he called Counter-Earth, which he said was never visible to us on Earth because of a symmetrical orbit with our own. Using numbers, he discovered the relationship between the planets, musical harmony, and mathematical ratio, which was then combined with geometry. He began experimenting with color and music, an attempt to harmoniously heal illness. He assigned numbers two properties, that of magnitude and multitude. Magnitude was represented by geometry and astronomy. Geometry was said to be stationary, for it gave shape to matter and was a combination of points, lines, surfaces, and solids. 1, 2, 3, 4. Astronomy was termed movable because everything associated with it evolves and is affected by geometry. Multitude is represented by arithmetic and music. Our relationship to self is infinite and expressed by numbers. Music is the relationship or harmony of objects between each other. The following quote, believe it or not, was from an article I found in the Washington Post, and it says, Pythagoras discovered that a complete system of mathematics could be constructed where geometric elements corresponded with numbers, and where integers and their ratios were all that was necessary to establish an entire system of logic and truth. But something shattered the elegant mathematical world built by Pythagoras and his followers. It was the discovery of irrational numbers. This leads one to think, then, that life can only be rationally explained to a limited extent. There appeared to be an irrational element that existed too. This was a secret only the highest initiates of Pythagoras knew. Irrational numbers are real numbers that cannot be expressed by a fraction, a over b. The golden ratio and Fibonacci sequence are irrational numbers, and they are used frequently in sacred geometry, Renaissance art, architecture, as well as modern industrial design. Take a look in your room at a basic on and off light switch. It is said that that is an example of the Fibonacci sequence and sacred geometry used in an everyday household. Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man of Divine Proportions was based upon Cornelius Agrippa's drawing of a man within a circle on a pentagram, showing the relationship between ourselves and the divine, the rational and irrational. Maybe now we can understand and see some truth in this statement that God is numbers. Pythagoras taught alternation. We might call it polarity or duality. He designated odd numbers as positive and male, while even numbers were considered negative and feminine. Unity was represented by the right side, meaning stability, light, and equality. Darkness was considered binary, left, unequal, and unstable. This is interesting considering Western occultism teaches that there are two magical paths coined by HPB, known as the left-hand path, which is considered black magic, and the right-hand path, or white magic. On our website, we have a fascinating article written by an associate of Dion Fortune's Society of Inner Light, which is entitled The Dweller on the Threshold. In nearly all archetypal writings, we read about what Carl Jung calls our shadow. This is the part of our personality we usually subconsciously repress. It's the dark side in every man that sits and waits for us. The dweller is what we seek to acknowledge and confront when we practice